Hello everybody, Jeffrey Bartell here, and today is September 21st, and in my hands here is an envelope which inside contains what we're gonna be discussing today. So let's take a look at what's inside. Okay, now let's see what it is, and it's the International Day of Peace. This is gonna be good. The reason I say that is because peace refers to absence of hostilities. It refers to an environment that is characterized by healthy interpersonal and international relationships, acknowledgement of equality and fairness, etc. Peace is especially important in today's world. This is because if we look around us, we see a number of nations who are at war with each other. There are a number of factors that are responsible for unrest in the world. The bigger nations are not playing their true role in managing the world, like the United States, European Union, or Britain and France, Russia, China, India, and maybe even Brazil. In fact, they are imposing their laws on the rest of the world. Those countries I mentioned. That's why things need to change, and I'll mention that in another video. That idea. But anyway, peace is important because we need a better world for our next generations. Peace is important because we can enjoy the benefits of the latest technological and scientific advancements only in times of peace. And that can't happen unless we trust people. Trust is vital in a peaceful world. In fact, but there's so much division that's keeping us from doing that, like race, religion, gender, wealth, etc. Which is why I made a music video in memory of John Lennon, which you are all going to hear, right? Which you're going to see about in tribute to world peace on the International Day of Peace, which you are going to see right about now.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell
Well, what did you think? If you like the music video, then tell me in the comment section down below, or in the live chat box over there. I poured my heart out into that thing. Well, actually, John Lennon poured his heart into making the music, but I did the video work. But anyway, world peace day is very important. It's very important to me. Not just to me, but to many other people around the world. Why? Well, world peace, or peace on earth, is the concept of an ideal state of happiness, freedom, and peace within and among all people and nations on planet Earth. This idea of world nonviolence is one motivated for people and nations to look cooperate. See, hang on. I don't know how to pronounce that word. Or so. Cooperate. So that's alright. No, let me try it again. Alright. Let me try it again. Sorry about that. This idea of world nonviolence is one motivation for people and nations to look cooperate, either voluntarily or by virtue of a system of governance that has this objective. Different cultures, religions, philosophies, and organizations have varying concepts on how such a state would come about. Various religious and secular organizations have the stated aim of achieving world peace through addressing human rights, technology, education, engineering, medicine, or diplomacy, used as an end to all forms of fighting. Since 1945, the United Nations and the 5 permanent members of its Security Council, China, France, Russia, United Kingdom, and the United States, have operated under the aim to resolve conflicts without war or declarations of war. Nonetheless, nations have entered numerous military conflicts since then. A good example is Russia and Syria. But now as for the International Day of Peace, or it's sometimes officially known as World Peace Day. It's a United Nations-sanctioned holiday observed annually on September 21st. That's today. It is dedicated to world peace and specifically the absence of war and violence, such as might be occasioned by a temporary ceasefire in a combat zone for humanitarian aid access. A good example that could be practiced on is in Syria, the Syrian civil war. Anyway, the day was first celebrated in 1981 and is kept by many nations, political groups, military groups, and people. In 2013, the day was dedicated by the Secretary General of the United Nations to peace education, the key preventive means to reduce war sustainably. To inaugurate the day, the United Nations peace bell is rung at UN headquarters in New York City. The bell is cast from coins donated by children from all continents except Africa. I wonder why. And was a gift from the United Nations Association of Japan as a reminder of the human cost of war. The inscription, a good example of the human cost of war is take the Eastern Front of World War II in Europe, and take the Pacific Front with. Hold on, let me try that again. Take the Eastern Front in Europe between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, and the Pacific War between the United States and Japan. Anyway, the inscription on its side reads, "Long live absolute world peace." In recent years, a searchable map of events has been published at UN.org. So for this video, I'm going to share. So that's what world peace is very important. Peace over war. That's why I'm a big supporter of it. And you know, if I ever become a president, I'm a president United. Oh wait, I'll discuss that part later. But in the meantime, let me get to the point of this. Let me get to the point of what I'm going to do in this video. So, in this video, I'm going to be sharing my messages, ideas, etc. for world peace, and also who's the best, and also who's the best candidate to vote for world peace during the 2020 election for President of the United States, since it's coming up. But here's a good quote for you. But let me start off with a good quote for world peace before we get started on the videos. It doesn't matter what your culture, religion, philosophy, wealth, height, gender, race, age, So disabled, whether you're disabled or not disabled, etc. Because in the end, we are all human, and we should be getting along to help preserve this planet for future generations to come, not destroying it and leaving future generations to suffer. I know that didn't sound good, but it's a work in progress. We'll just put it here. Just put it here. I hope you understood what that meant. But anyway, let's get started. Shall we? Give me a second to get give me a second or two to get the video to get the next scene set up. I told you it'd give you a set. I told you it would take me a second or two. Do you like the design for world peace? Especially the picture in the center, and over there, the scale for war and peace. I know I got video sources here. One here, one in that corner, and one in that corner. But I'm probably thinking, why not in that corner? Well, there's gonna be a video source, all right, but you're gonna have to wait. You're gonna have to wait for it. And there are others too. And there's another one too. But I'll get to that later down the line in the video. Okay. So let's get started, shall we? First up is this video. A PowerPoint presentation mentioned the meaning and importance of the International Day of Peace, which is celebrated every year on September 21st by
Amol Khatri.
Yeah, that name. Hope you like it. That's good. International Day of Peace, September 21st. What do you mean by peace? Peace is the concept of societal friendship and harmony in the absence of hostility and violence. In other words, freedom from disturbance, tranquility. When things change inside you, things change around you. Why is peace important in life? Peace helps you understand the surroundings. It makes the mind is like base to the home, roots to the tree. Without peace, our friends can be our enemies. Our significant others can be the ones we need to fight against. And that's important for world leaders. This year's theme is Shaping Peace Together. As you can see right there in that picture. Oh, and also in the thumbnail that you thumbnail this video. That probably got your attention, I'm hoping. the key discovery. This year it has been clearer than ever that we are not each other's enemies. Rather, our common enemy is a tireless virus that threatens our health, security, and very way of life. Exactly. That's a good example of putting our differences aside and fighting a common enemy. Who knows? We might learn about each other doing that, and may attain peace in the long run. Find your inner peace. Here are the pillars of peace. 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 Low levels of corruption. Sound business environment. Well-functioning government. Good relations with neighbors. High levels of human capital. And equitable distribution of resources. And I agree with that. Peace. Like two kinds of peace. Peace. Positive peace and negative peace. Here's positive peace, promoting structural and cultural peace development of society. Negative peace, absence of physical violence or condition of war. I never knew that till now. I don't know if we should choose both or one or the other. You tell me in the comments or the live chat section, okay? Let's continue. Steps to find peace. Rejoice. Rejoice. Don't be anxious. Pray and ask. Be gentle. Thank. Peace and happiness. When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. Jimi Hendrix. I like that quote. Maintain a good relationship with your soul. I am Amal Qatar. Thanks. I am Amal Qatari. If you found the power, I think that's PowerPoint, useful, like, share, and subscribe. You can find me at amal.qatari on Instagram. That's him right there. Thank you. Visit again for awesome PowerPoints. Now this video is the 10 lines on International Day of Peace. Science Special Class.
Hello kids, welcome back to my YouTube channel Science Special Class. In this video we are going to learn 10 lines on International Day of Peace. So let us get started. The International Day of Peace, it is also called Peace Day, is observed around the world each year on 21 September. The International Day of Peace was established in 1981. The first peace day was observed in September 1982. This day is dedicated to world peace and specifically the absence of war and violence. On this day, special activities and celebrations are held all across the world. This day provides an opportunity for individuals, organizations, and nations to create practical acts of peace on a shared date. To inaugurate the day, the United Nations peace bell is rung at UN headquarters in New York City. Peace is the hope of every nation, the promise of every politician, and the goal of every prayer. The theme for International Day of Peace 2020 is Shaping Peace Together. Spread message of peace and motivate people around the world to spread peace and love. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If you like this video, please like this video, share this video with your friends, and also subscribe my channel Science Special Class. Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh yeah. Speaking of quotes, every now and then during this video, there's gonna be a video showing quotes based on the International Day of Peace. Here we got inspiring peace thoughts, peace day slogans, world 20. Let's start.
Welcome back to Om and Manu's world. If you're watching for the first time, please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon for more videos.
Mahatma Gandhi, an eye for an eye will only make the whole world blind. Mahatma Gandhi, peace between countries must rest on the solid foundation of love between individuals. Mahatma Gandhi, peace is its own reward. Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa. If we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other. Mother Teresa. Every act of love is a work of peace, no matter how small. Mother Teresa, peace begins with a smile. Mother Teresa, there is no way to peace. There is only peace. Thank you for watching. You're welcome.
War and peace, I think they're binaries.
Okay, this is a clip from the scene, The Story of Us. Here's Morgan Freeman explaining, is peace on Earth possible? Let's see.
War and peace, I think they're binaries. I don't think you can contemplate the one without the other.
We ask people of 22 countries, is peace on Earth possible?
Yes, isn't that the giant question?
Depends.
Credo che bisognerebbe prima chiedersi se sia possibile la pace. Credo che bisognerebbe prima chiedersi.
Let me because of the dang thing.
Yes, isn't that the giant question?
Depends.
Credo che bisognerebbe prima chiedersi se sia possibile la pace dentro noi stessi.
世界和平有冇可能？我覺得唔係太可能嘅嘢嚟嘅。
Yes, peace on earth. If there's unity in all.
Yes, peace on earth. If there's unity in all of us.
Ik ben bang van niet. Het zit in de aard
It is in the nature of human beings to
van
make
de
war.
mens om oorlog te maken.
많은 어려움이
Even though there are a lot of difficulties, it is
있겠지만
possible.
가능하다고 생각합니다.
Yes.
I get the feeling that as long as there are men, there will never.
Il y aura des hommes, il n'y aura jamais de paix.
Φυσικά και είναι εφικτή.
Of course, as long as we understand
Απλώς
love
πρέπει να
first.
κατανοήσεις πρώτα την αγάπη.
Теоретически,
In
конечно,
theory, of course, yes, but practically, I don't think so.
возможен, а практически, мне кажется, нет.
Not likely, but we keep our fingers crossed.
Yo creo que la paz es
I think
posible
peace is
si
possible if we
colaboramos
all
todos.
collaborate together. The way men reason, no.
Yes, I
Yes.
do believe peace on earth is really possible.
Not possible. Never going to happen.
Tak jest możliwe.
Yes, it's possible.
Non è possibile la pace.
No, peace on earth is not possible.
Te quiero tomar.
I think it is possible.
Diría que es casi
Partly, I would say it's almost impossible to have peace on earth.
paz en la Tierra, porque las opiniones humanas
Because human opinions lead us into arguing, and to stop arguing would be in part losing our humanity.
Y dejar de pelear en parte sería perder nuestra
What do
humanidad.
you think of that one?
Sí, siempre.
Yes, always. No. It is possible, but it will not be easy.
Prima pensare
First, help me make peace with my mom. Then we'll think about peace on
a
earth.
far pace con mia madre e me e poi pensiamo alla pace del mondo.
Due to this greed, we can't have peace on earth. I agree with that part.
As long as people they
As long as people can get together, there will be peace and harmony.
there'll be peace and harmony.
Yani şu sistem
Or
içinde
peace is
mümkün
not
değil.
possible, not in the
Yes.
system.
Mümkün değil. Yani şu sistem içinde mümkün değil. Yes.
Together, there'll be peace and harmony. As people they can get together. As long as people they can get together, there'll be peace and harmony.
Yani şu sistem içinde mümkün
Or peace is not possible, not within this system.
değil.
In Turkey, yes, I agree with that part. The current leader of Turkey has to go.
Yes.
Possible.
Jest możliwe,
It's possible. It's all up to the people.
wszystko zależy od ludzi.
Maybe it is possible, but we don't want it, obviously.
Mi ga ne želimo očigledno.
World peace is possible if people became extinct. Okay, I don't know how that one could be. I don't know how that one could be world peace. Because that achieves enough. That'd be peace. That's peace and world peace for humanity, not. Ugh.
I don't think so. Too many egos, too many people, too many weapons.
If love is equally distributed to all of the world, peace can be shared.
If there's peace, you're preparing for war. And if there's war, you're fighting for peace. Wasn't that cool? Say yes. Come on, then you agree.
Story about Morgan Freeman. That's a show you'll probably want to check out, but that's gonna be that's difficult. Thank you, Morgan Freeman. Or you could just check out this, or you could check out this playlist right here. Maybe. Well, you can't watch it through via YouTube, but you'll have to buy it first. Okay, now can there ever be world peace? War?
Hi everyone, my name is James Patel and I'm going to be talking to you guys a little bit about war. Now the topic of this video is going to be, can war ever end, or can there be world peace on an international level? But before we get into that, let's ask ourselves a quick question. Why do people go to war? Now, the answer is not as simple as the question. There are lots of reasons to go to war, but one of the biggest reasons is that people want more, whether it be land, power, or even revenge. So let's put this into perspective. Let's say there are two nations, Nation A and Nation B. Now, Nation A has a lot of land while Nation B doesn't. At the same time, though, Nation B has a large military while Nation A doesn't. So suppose Nation B for some reason needs Nation A's land. A has something B needs and B has the means to take it. This is one of the most common backdrops of war. Now, because B clearly has military advantage over A, after years of war, it does end up succeeding in taking the land previously owned by A. After this happens, A's at a loss, but the destruction and havoc that B caused has brought its people closer than ever, and they rebuild. Though the war is over, A and B are now in tension with each other, and while this tension can't really stop, it doesn't mean it can't slow down and fade away. This is where politics and trade come into play. Suppose after years of rebuilding, A comes out stronger and more spirited than ever before. The war has caused advances in technology, medicine, and militia for A far past anyone else on the planet, let alone B. If A continuously manufactures something that B needs, B can't just take it anymore. Not only does B not possess the power to take it, but it'll also need a constant flow of that product, meaning B cannot, so to speak, cut open the golden goose, or they lose it. Therefore, B decides to make an agreement with A, one that will mutually benefit each party. At this point in time, A can either deny B the right to its product, or it can swallow its pride and benefit from a new relationship. This demonstrates that peace and hatred can coexist without violence, and that's a really important point to make because that's what's been happening in the world for the past 40 years. A real-world example of this would be the relationship between the US and China. China and the US don't really like each other, but China has the power to cheaply produce products that the US needs, and the US has money to pay for them. So, for the time being, we tolerate each other, and the chances of starting a war with China become very slim since the US needs China and China needs the US. While this concept of mutual benefit is implemented in every nation in the world, it creates a network of trade and dependence whose mutual benefits outweigh the need for any war between them. Now that we have a good grasp of the reasons for a war, we can move on to the factors of it. Webster's dictionary defines violence as the use of force to harm someone. Violence is something that war cannot exist without. Seth Borenstein, a science writer and professor at NYU, says that the world has seen an overall decrease in violence over the last few hundred years. He explains the reason for that is, over generations, IQ has been getting higher. Now, depending on the values and ideologies you grew up with, intelligence does not necessarily equate to moral development. Adolf Hitler is seen as one of the smartest leaders in history because of the effect he had on so many people, but he was still the reason for so much death and destruction. But Hitler was also a sociopath. So, though there are exceptions, there's a clear and strong correlation between intelligence and reluctance to hurt other people. Now, between violence, death, and destruction, war is clearly a bad thing, but at the same time, it also has its benefits. Ian Morris, a history professor at Stanford University, wrote an entire book about why war is good for society and why it actually helps people in the long run. He states a few reasons that war is a good thing in moderation for society. So the first reason he states is, while war is the worst imaginable way to create larger, more peaceful societies, it is pretty much the only way humans have found. This makes sense, because in a way, after a war, two parties are more likely to like each other when they mutually hate a third. Another reason Morris has for believing war is good is that over the long run, large societies forged from war have made us richer. Though the Native Americans had to suffer so that whites could have land in the Americas, it did lead to all this advancement. That begs the question, was all their suffering worth how much the human race has progressed over the years? Well, there's no real answer to that question since people have different values. Now, Morris's final point is a little difficult to understand. He says that humans are getting so good at war that they are putting war out of business. So right now, almost everyone that matters has nuclear weapons. But nobody wants to fire them because of the concept of mutually assured destruction. The idea that if you fire a missile while it's in the air, I have time to fire mine back. So we all have the means to act, but those actions have consequences. So now that we have a good grasp of war, let's bring everything together. The fact that people get smarter leads to a decrease in violence, and a decrease in violence leads to reluctance to go to war. On a national level, trade independence causes avoidance of war, and trade is growing. War is becoming so destructive, it's starting to not be worth going to war. So with these things combined, the final verdict is that war has a lot of reasons to permanently retire. Whether or not it will is theory, but even if it did, it probably wouldn't be for a long, long time. Now, I think I've covered everything, so everyone, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.
You're welcome. What did I just click? Oops, sorry. Hold on. Okay. All right. Sorry, I accidentally hit a key. Anyway, I needed to fix something. All right. World Peace is Not a Myth by Rut Yerdar. TEDx SSC. The X equals independently organized TED event. World Peace is Not a Myth.
I'm very honored to be standing up here tonight, not only to be able to hold a TED Talk, but also for being able to be in the same presence as so many inspirational and driven people. People that I truly look up to, some of them being my idols. I'm not going to lie though, I was nerve-wracked before I entered the stage. I literally felt like I was going to pee my pants. Don't worry, I'm good now, but my heart was racing, my stomach was hurting, and my body was sweating.
Stockholm School of Economics.
And then I realized that I had felt like this before. These feelings that I had reminded me of my first day in university. You see, when I got accepted to the leading business school in Sweden last year, I was beyond happy. Happy that I didn't pursue med school and happy that I had found my passion. I had heard a whole lot about the school, and I was therefore very eager to meet my classmates. Looking around the class the first few weeks, I thought to myself, I'm probably sitting next to Sweden's next billionaire or prime minister, so I better be nice. With the help of all of these contacts and resources, I was sure that I could change the world and make it a better place. However, to my surprise, I was not met with the same enthusiasm as I had hoped for. Even though these students were very smart and innovative, because they seemed to give the same response as the rest of the world. It didn't really seem to matter if I talked to my aunties at a family dinner or if I talked to Sweden's most brilliant students. Everyone reacted in an identical manner. It was like when I talked about world peace, ending hunger, and creating equal opportunities for every person on the planet, everyone in my surroundings sighed and looked at me like I was crazy. And on top of that, they all had the same counter-argument. Ruth, you know, world peace is a nice idea, in theory. I mean, have you heard about the survival of the fittest? Rivalry is kind of human nature. You would think that I understood them, because I've done that too. Once upon a time, I also lost hope in humanity. I remember laughing at people who actually thought that the world would become less barbaric with time. And I did not only laugh, I made sure to assure them that racial prejudice had not died out, the Holocaust was reoccurring with the Uyghur Muslims in China, and that resource exploitation in the Middle East was a fact. But still, I couldn't help but be surprised. How could so many people be so negative? I couldn't wrap my head around it. I mean, they believed in cryptocurrencies, but God forbid you would go and work for charity. Electronic cars, smartphones, artificial intelligence, everything was possible. But equality, peace, and understanding, only philosophical. So pardon me for not agreeing with the rest of the world. Pardon me for keep talking about world peace when no one else is agreeing. Because the rest of the world doesn't make sense to me. There's clearly a pattern here. We have people arguing that world peace is not human nature. And they are right. But at the same time, take, for example, flying. Flying is not human nature either, but we do it every single day. We as humans have accomplished so much in this world that does not align with the idea of human nature. So why does the challenge of achieving world peace frighten us so much? I'm going to use Jody Williams' definition of world peace, and maybe then you will agree with me that it's possible. Because just as she said, it's not about holding hands and singing Kumbaya, unfortunately.
Wish it was.
World peace, according to her and me, is sustainable peace with justice and equality. It is a sustainable peace in which the majority of the people on this planet have access to enough resources to live dignified lives, where people have access to education and healthcare, so that they can live in freedom from want and in freedom from fear. Because we cannot expect people to believe in peace when they go hungry, when they don't have jobs, when there is such a discrepancy between developing countries and those that are already developed. It's like this is the world right now, okay? Some of us have it really good, whilst others are living in miserable conditions. This is the goal. This is world peace. Now, if you talk about peace in this sense, the world is already improving. It is already happening. We are breaking through right now. Hans Rosling talked about this in his book Factfulness, which I read last summer, and it's a really good book, and I recommend all of you guys to read it. But in his book, he stated that during the last 20 years, the amount of people living in extreme poverty has decreased in half. During the last 20 years, the amount of people living in extreme poverty has decreased in half. That's amazing. That's the goal. A total of 80% of the women living in low-income countries today finish primary school. And a total of 87% of the world population also have access to electricity. During the 19th century, the amount of children dying before the age of 5 was 44%. Today, we are down to 4%. Now, some people might argue and say that 4% is still too much. And I agree, trust me, I do. But at the same time, it's wrong to neglect the fact that the world is actually becoming better when it is. So now when I have convinced you guys that world peace is possible, you might be wondering how to achieve it. And that's a reasonable question. But don't look at me because I don't know. To be honest, I don't. I'm a 19-year-old naive girl who's barely surviving this bachelor education. And on top of that, this is my first year. If I had the answer, I would tell you. Trust me. But that's not the point of this conversation. My aspiration with this speech is to inspire you to think outside of the box. My aspiration with this speech is to show you guys that world peace is feasible. We did not come this far to only come this far. My aspiration with this speech is to show you that we are on the right path, even though I don't know the exact strategy behind creating world peace. The world population is increasing by the minute. Simultaneously, the Earth is becoming more globalized. According to the UN, the world population is projected to increase by 1 billion people over the next 13 years. So there will be more cultural clashes, which in turn will become seeds of serious conflict. Because of this, I believe that the least we can do is have a positive outlook, have hope. Consequently, I would like to finish off with a quote by Robert Kennedy. And I want you guys to know that I truly believe that we can break through our mental barriers and believe in a better world. Even though electric cars, cryptocurrency, smartphones, and world peace is not human nature, we as humans always seem to find a way. Anyways, back to the quote. Few people will have the greatness to bend history itself. But each of us can work to change a small portion of events. And in the total of all those acts will be written the history of this generation. World peace is not a myth. Thank you.
For more information on TEDx, visit www.ted.com/TEDx. I hope you took your word. Okay, Vox is gonna explain now in this video. Vox is gonna explain why the 3 big reasons war is going away.
So if you read the headlines, it kind of seems like the world is a terrible place, full of violence, despair, and war. But it turns out, war is actually declining. We live in the most peaceful time in human history. There's lots of reasons why, but here's 3 of the biggest ones.
The democratic peace, nuclear deterrence, and sovereignty.
First, the spread of democracy around the world. International relations scholars have found consistently that democracies don't fight wars with each other. Now, why is that true? There might be plenty of reasons, but one big one is that people who live in democracies think it's wrong to start wars with other democracies. They're legitimate governments, it's wrong to attack them. But there's a flip side to this. Democracies do often fight wars with autocracies. Luckily, most of the world's countries are democracies now, so the democratic peace is probably making the world a much more peaceful place. Second big reason why war is declining is nuclear deterrence. Nuclear weapons, obviously big and scary. However, nuclear deterrence may have prevented a devastating war between the United States and the Soviet Union. Everyone recognized that they would lose. Statistical evidence suggests that that is true. That is, that most countries are too scared of the consequences of nuclear war to fight one.
Okay. Let me restart it just in case.
So if you read the headlines, it kind of seems like the world is a terrible place, full of violence, despair, and war. But it turns out, war is actually declining. We live in the most peaceful time in human history. There's lots of reasons why, but here's 3 of the biggest ones. First, the spread of democracy around the world. International relations scholars have found consistently that democracies don't fight wars with each other. Now, why is that true? There might be plenty of reasons, but one big one is that people who live in democracies think it's wrong to start wars with other democracies. They're legitimate governments, it's wrong to attack them. But there's a flip side to this. Democracies do often fight wars with autocracies. Luckily, most of the world's countries are democracies now, so the democratic peace is probably making the world a much more peaceful place. Second big reason why war is declining is nuclear deterrence. Nuclear weapons, obviously big and scary. However, nuclear deterrence may have prevented a devastating war between the United States and the Soviet Union. Everyone recognized that they would lose. Statistical evidence suggests that that is true. That is, that most countries are too scared of the consequences of nuclear war to fight one. There is a dark side, and not just the risk of global annihilation from an accident. If a country gets nuclear weapons, they feel rather safer in being aggressive in little ways, small conflicts or bullying around their non-nuclear neighbors. This weird paradox that nuclear weapons make the world more violent and more peaceful at the same time is called the stability-instability paradox. The third reason that wars declined has been the spread of the idea of national sovereignty. This idea is hundreds of years old. The idea that you shouldn't interfere inside the borders of another state. But people didn't take the idea too seriously because stealing new land used to be a major cause of war. Think American and European colonialism or World War II. But after World War II, nations pledged to stop. Since 1976, there hasn't been a single successful war of conquest, except for maybe Russia and Crimea really recently. Again, though, sovereignty is a flip side. Sometimes governments go to war against their own people, and poor, weak governments often collapse into civil war. Sovereignty makes it hard for the international community to intervene to stop either of those kinds of wars. But on the whole, when you see those terrible headlines, remember, the world's way better off than it ever has been. There's less war and less violence than almost any other time in human history. That's something worth celebrating.
Thank you, Box.
Truth is the first.
Okay, now here's a clip. I'm gonna show you. Now this is a scene from Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. So I'm gonna show you a clip for that from the president of from the president of Russia. As he's about to make as he was on his way to make peace with America and maybe Europe too before you probably know the story. Before Makarov's men hijacked hijacked and kidnapped the president. Okay.
Hello, Mr. President. President?
There's a Forseski.
Gentlemen, we have only two choices. Peace or war. Life or death. For the sake of our children, we must seek peace with the West.
Mr. President, now is not the time to appease our enemies.
We destroy our enemies when we make friends with them.
We destroy our enemies when we make friends with them. That's the best way to defeat your enemy. It's to make him your friend. Keep that in mind.
If we cannot end our differences, at least...
That's gunfire!
I hope you heard what he said. That was a good inspiration. That was a good quote by him, President Forseski. If I said it right. Oh, and speaking of quotes, here's quotes about inner peace. Peace Day. New quotes for Peace 2020 World Peace Day quotes. Here we go. Maha's blogs. Peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding. Albert Einstein. Peace is a daily, a weekly, a monthly process, gradually changing opinions, slowly eroding old barriers, and quietly building new structures. John F. Kennedy. Every breath we take, every step we make, can be filled with peace, joy, and serenity. Thich Nhat Hanh. Let go of thoughts that don't make you strong. Karim Salman Soul. The life of inner peace, being harmonious and without stress, is the easiest type of existence. Norman Vincent Peale. When you make peace with yourself, you'll make peace with the world. Mahatma. Don't let the behavior of others destroy your inner peace. Dalai Lama. When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. Jimi Hendrix. You will find peace not by trying to escape your problems, but confronting them courageously. You will find peace not in denial, but in victory. J. Donald Walters. You'll never find peace of mind until you listen to your heart. George Michael. Peace. Blogging is my passion. Peace and love. Okay, here's an example. Okay, this is from the DC universe, and here's another example of peace. Like I said before, their quote videos will appear every now and then. So here's an example of peace. Right up to here.
Wow, someone sure did a number on this place.
Actually, I hadn't even started. Do you believe the horrendous amount of public funding spent on this so-called art? It's garbage, an affront to any decent human aesthetic.
Okay. I'll just take you back to prison where you won't have to look at the ugly old sculptures anymore.
Just wait for it. Just
well, this looks to be a joyous Yuletide after all.
Just wait for it, Joe.
Missed.
What?
Should have asked Santa for extra batteries. No!
What a shame. I broke your toy.
It was a present for some kids who really wanted it.
A paltry bit of plastic and crude electronics. They'd have been better off with a book. I suggest Voltaire.
Don't you remember what it's like to have your heart set on something? And that awful feeling when you didn't get it?
Yes, and I usually have you and your teammates to blame for that.
I was talking about Christmas.
Oh, that garish, hollow charade. Forced jollity on every lip, instancy of goodwill in every heart. Tidings of comfort and joy indeed.
For a creep that claims to personify human advancement, I think you'd know what it means to pass along goodwill. Especially to kids who need some. I'd like to think they'd grow up to pass that goodwill on to others.
A not unworthy aspiration.
You can go ahead and use that thing for all I care. I couldn't feel any worse.
As you wish. You'll be happy to know, Flash, that your words, jejune though they were, did not fall on deaf ears. I appreciate the sentiment behind them, and therefore call a truce in honor of the season.
Seriously?
You'll have the toy to give to your young friends. I'm improving it, too.
It's not gonna blow up or anything.
Flash, it is Christmas.
Okay. But why did you hit me?
You hit me first. Hand me that screwdriver, will you?
See? Even if Ultra Humanite a villain and Flash a hero, even if they can come to agree, if they could call a truce during the Christmas season, then why can't we do the same? Then why can't the world do the same thing? And you know, something like that actually did happen in real life. A Christmas truce during World War I, which you'll now see.
Christmas Truce, 1914. On Christmas Eve 1914, on the Western Front, British soldiers heard German troops in the opposite trenches singing carols. They soon joined in with the singing, and both sides shouted Merry Christmas to each other between the trenches. At the first light of dawn on Christmas Day, British and German soldiers met across no man's land. At first, it was feared by Allied soldiers that it was a trick, but this was diffused when it was clear that the German soldiers were unarmed. Second Lieutenant Duggan Chater wrote back home, "I think I have seen one of the most extraordinary sights today that anyone has ever seen. About 10 o'clock this morning I was peeping over the parapet when I saw a German waving his arms, and presently 2 of them got out of their trenches and some came toward ours. We were just going to fire on them when we saw they had no rifles, so one of our men went out to meet them, and in about 2 minutes the ground between the 2 lines of trenches was swarming with men and officers of both sides, shaking hands and wishing each other a happy Christmas." The soldiers who had previously been shooting at each other now shook hands, exchanged gifts of cigarettes and chocolate, buried their dead, and even played a game of football. This ceasefire was not observed everywhere on the Western Front, with fighting continuing elsewhere on Christmas Day. Some officers were unhappy with the truce and worried that it would undermine their soldiers' fighting spirits. The truce came just 5 months after the outbreak of war in Europe, and was one of the last times that the outdated notion of chivalry between enemies would be observed.
Merry Christmas.
Watch our other videos to learn more. Get your copy of Simple History, World War I, available on Amazon now.
The point, you see, if they were able to do that, if they were able to do that then, why can't we do it now? It would at least show our humanity. Even though, because look at World War II, after which when the U.S. and Japan were at war, back then, today we're friends. Same with the Germans and Italians with the U.S. We're all friends now. We resolved our. We got rid of. We resolved our unfortunate misunderstanding. We resolved the misunderstandings, if that's the right word. And now we're friends. So why can't we do that? So why can't people do that especially during holiday days like this? It would at least show even during wartime there is humanity. The soldiers are not inhuman. They're human. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. And someone actually did make a movie about the Christmas truce, which you're about to see in the form of a trailer right now. I can't read that. Oh no, I can't.
War has been declared.
For this war is indeed a crusade to save the freedom of the world.
France, 1914, the world is at war. 6 minutes.
I abandoned
One
him
battlefield
like a coward, and I let him die.
Now we must pray for him and for all the other casualties.
Aber seien Sie wachsam.
Be wary, they'll stop at nothing, even on Christmas Eve.
Denen ist alles zuzutrauen, selbst an Heiligabend.
Until an extraordinary event. Brought enemies together.
We were talking about a ceasefire. I don't think anyone would criticize us for laying down our rifles on Christmas Eve.
This is my wife.
Merry Christmas.
Frohe Weihnachten.
Very annoying.
A moment of humanity that changed everything.
Ça s'appelle haute trahison.
It's high treason.
Peine de mort.
Punishable by death.
It's time for you to go back. I hope you both make it through the war.
The truce is over. Any minute now, the Germans will start shooting at you.
Let us go while there's still... What? While there's still time.
What are you waiting for? Shoot him!
Shame on you, Gordon. Shame on you.
Based on an incredible true story. Joyex Noel. Merry Christmas. Is that how you say? Without an enemy, there can be no war. On Christmas Day 2020, I'm gonna be reacting to watching this video and react to it. So I hope you stick around that time and watch in honor of Christmas. I know I'm getting off track of Christmas, but I'm just trying to show a point of peace between what happened here. If this happened in real life, it should be able to happen more often. www.hopscotchfilms.com/au.
A 1, 2, 3,
Meet promo.com. It's finally fast and easy to create effective videos for your.
Okay, now this video is gonna is special. How it's gonna show how this president won a Nobel Peace Prize for ending a war. At least I think that's correct. This is from Real Stories, the YouTube channel. So it's
Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos won international praise and the 2016 Nobel Peace Prize for ending a 5-decade civil war that left some 260,000 people dead and 8 million displaced. Port of Destiny recounts the drama of Colombia's path to peace. As defense minister, Santos waged war on the terrorist guerrilla movement FARC, hunting down its leaders and orchestrating high-wire hostage rescues. As president, he brokered peace, but paid a steep political price.
But I bet it was worth it in the end. So let's see. So let's watch this video. Yeah, I know. And for the record, it's 51 minutes and 6 seconds long. All right. You know what, before we do, let's take a quick break. Be right back. Okay, we're back. Now let's start the video. By Real Stories. Real Stories. A Seller's Icing production.
I was born in the middle of a civil war.
A film by Robert Abbott.
And since then, my whole life, I have had
produced by Nina Estenkel.
Around me, around my family, or around. I have
Kelly
had war around me, around my family.
Republic of Colombia.
This war, the war against the FARC, this war was a brutal war. We had so many massacres, so many days. People started to get immune to seeing people die. That's why we had to stop this war, to end the war. You must continue to try to bring peace to this country, otherwise Colombia will have no future.
He's right.
If you have a Port of Destiny, no matter what type of winds you have against you, you can use them to get to your port. You must continue, persevere.
Muchas gracias, bendiciones.
I sincerely hope that the peace we reached will be a peace that will last forever, and it's a peace that change the course of our country for the better.
Port of Destiny, Peace. President Juan Manuel Santos. Casa de Reina.
Colombia has been a very violent country since our independence.
We have, unfortunately, a sort of a culture of violence that goes back to the 19th century, when we had over 12 civil wars in Colombia.
More wars than any other country in Latin America. But this war, the war against the FARC, has been the longest, 54 years.
Colombia was the oldest democracy in the Western Hemisphere except for the United States. It was such a wealthy, blessed country. If you could ever stop the violence and have inclusive economics and inclusive politics, the long-term future of the country was just almost unlimited.
The Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, known as the FARC, began in 1964 as the armed wing of the country's Communist Party. The guerrilla group's Marxist message to overthrow the government found broad appeal among small farmers and rural workers suffering under extreme poverty and inequality. Classified as a terrorist organization by Western countries, the FARC financed their terror through kidnappings and ransom, extortion, and receipts from cocaine sales. Juan Manuel Santos was just 13 years old when FARC emerged. He was one of 4 boys born to Enrique and Clemencia.
My parents were wonderful parents. My father, he was that type of person who people love at first sight. Very agreeable. He made many friends. My mother had a different temperament. She was much more disciplined, much more austere in her emotions. My mother, my father, when I was a cadet in the Naval Academy, you can see the expression. She was not very happy. My father was very proud.
Our father was a journalist. Through journalism, he had ink in his blood. He worked in our family newspaper, El Tiempo, for almost 60 years.
My father always stimulated me to trust my instincts, but always said, do what you think is correct, no matter if it's popular or not.
Hamano was always a person that knew what he wanted. Ambitious, yes.
Did you hear that?
Always stimulated me to trust my instincts. My father always stimulated me to trust my instincts, but always said, do what you think is correct, no matter if it's popular or not.
Hamano was always a person that knew what he wanted. Ambitious, yes, not a doubt. And since he was very young, he liked politics, and he always thought in great scale.
After spending 3 years in the Navy, Santos spent the next 12 studying abroad at the University of Kansas, the London School of Economics, and Harvard University.
That gave me an opportunity of seeing life.
So I've been doing a lot of video conferencing recently, and by far the biggest problem I've had is lighting. So I decided to invest in my video.
Life in the world with a more city. That gave me an opportunity of seeing life in the world with a more broad perspective and with a more global approach.
That perspective included living in London during the time of IRA attacks, including one bombing that killed a man, injured 20 more, and knocked Santos to the ground. When he returned home to Colombia in 1982, Santos spent the next 9 years as the deputy editor of the family's newspaper.
That's when Pablo Escobar was the most dangerous drug trafficker and most powerful drug trafficker that I think the world has ever had. Went after everybody, especially after journalists.
The time when we felt most threatened directly was Pablo Escobar and his people because of their offensive against journalism.
He blew up El Espectador, which was the other newspaper. He murdered whoever he wanted.
The husband of my cousin was killed in the bomb that Escobar put in a Avianca airplane. And the threats, the constant threats that he made were really intimidating. He created a climate of fear, a sort of a dictatorship of fear in journalism that is just, I just get the shivers just thinking about what we went through.
We have lost our best leaders, our best journalists, our best policemen, our best judges.
In 1984, Santos faced a dilemma when he was told that Escobar held secret negotiations with former Colombian President Alfonso López Michelson. Escobar was offering to give up his drug business to avoid possible extradition to the United States. Many at the newspaper advised Santos not to publish the story.
I said, look, why don't we wait a while? And he said, no, we can't wait. We have to publish that. The next day, the scandal was enormous. I think in retrospective, and as a journalist, he was right.
By the 1980s, Colombia had the highest murder rate in the world. 1/3 of the country was under the control of the FARC, and another third was controlled by the drug traffickers and the paramilitary groups that protected them.
Fundamentalmente, los paramilitares se convirtieron en un ejército de ocupación.
Became an occupation army that used methods of extreme terror.
Que utilizó métodos de terror extremo. Los paramilitares
Paramilitaries used to go to small rural towns and take the people out to the public square.
Pueblos muy retirados, y sacaban a la población a la plaza pública donde
where they carried out their torture spectacles.
Hacían verdaderos espectáculos de tortura.
The FARC's tactics were equally brutal. In 1999, the coffee farm of Emilio Rojas was the location of one of these massacres.
Que esa tarde viajé a Bogotá a comprar las semillas para.
I traveled to Bogotá to buy seed to plant. My family stayed behind, my dad and my brothers.
Sembrar, y allí se quedó mi familia, mi papá, mis hermanos. Y esa.
That night, the same day at night, a group of armed people entered my farm, murdered them.
Ese mismo día, en la noche ingresó un grupo armado y los asesinó. Y desde entonces tuve que dejar allí todo.
So I had to leave everything there because they were after me to kill me too.
Buscaban a mí también para asesinarme.
Much of the rural areas where the FARC had presence was at war. People get accustomed to seeing death, seeing massacres.
Lo más común era la violación sexual de las mujeres.
Death, seeing massacres.
Lo más común era
the most common thing was the raping of women,
sexual de las mujeres, el descuartizamiento,
the dismembering of bodies in front of their family members,
cuerpos, enfrente de los familiares y de los amigos,
friends and the rest of the community,
de los ciudadanos de una población.
One night in the town of Novita, Modesta Rivas watched as rebel soldiers kidnapped her husband.
Lo sacaron de una cantina.
They took him from a bar.
Lo torturaron.
He was tortured.
Lo torturaron, le
they tortured him. They took all his teeth. They ripped his ears off and cut out his tongue. Ooh. I don't want that image in my mind.
Unas orejas, le cortaron la lengua. Todo eso decía, déjenme ver a mi familia.
Let me see my family.
Yo no he hecho nada.
I didn't do anything. Why are you doing this to me? I want to see my daughters.
Yo quiero ver a mis hijas, déjenme ver a mi familia. Lo tiraron
They threw him in a creek.
A un caño. Le hicieron todo
They
eso,
did
le
all these
dispararon y lo
things
tiraron a un
and then
caño.
shot him and threw him in a creek.
After her husband had been murdered, Rivas learned that rebel soldiers were planning to rape her and her daughter. So they fled in the middle of the night and became 2 of the 8 million Colombians who were driven from their homes during the civil war with the FARC.
Hardly any family had escaped the violence of that terrible time. They were longing for an end to the mindless, endless violence.
When a society simply forgets or loses the ability of feeling compassion, that society is simply a society that has no future. That for me was extremely, extremely worrisome and in a way a stimulus to end the war.
You know, I wonder what the communist countries, the other communist countries thought of these Colombian communist militias, or the FARC. If that's what they're called. I wonder what they thought of them. Let's hope it was not as good. Let's hope it wasn't. It was they viewed him negatively, because I don't think I don't think they probably would approve of the rape. So the raping, ugh. I don't think you. All that stuff, even. Ugh.
By the time Santos was tapped as finance minister in 2000, the country was on the brink of being declared a failed state.
Yo recuerdo que hubo años en que
there were
nosotros
years
perdimos,
where we lost many police.
Años en la policía, en un año
In
perdíamos
one
hasta
year,
700.
we lost up to 700 policemen who were killed out of crime.
Policías que eran asesinados por el crimen y por las guerrillas. Casi
Almost 2 policemen were murdered per day.
2 policías diarios morían en nuestro país.
The war was making it.
2 policías diarios, 500 policías que eran asesinados por el crimen y por las guerrillas. Casi 2 policías diarios morían en nuestro país.
The war was making it almost impossible for him to attract international investment. Santos saw the brutality of the war firsthand.
That park over there, that was a very nasty neighborhood, and from there they did an attack on this palace. And, I was Minister of Finance at the time on the outgoing government, and suddenly we saw a bombshell, and there was an attack on this palace from that park over there. I was in the middle of the war.
Bombings, kidnappings, and human carnage weren't the only fallout of the war. Wide swaths of Colombia's majestic and delicate ecosystem were systematically being destroyed.
The rebels, particularly the FARC, committed many environmental crimes, particularly attacks on the oil infrastructure that generated oil spills, many sensitive environmental areas like the Bay of Tumaco and others.
In 2006, Juan Manuel Santos became Minister of Defense, where his priority was coming up with a plan to weaken the FARC.
I went to my friend Tony Blair, who was Prime Minister, and I said, please help me with intelligence. And he introduced me to the head of MI6, who helped me a lot to reorganize the intelligence of all the forces.
We sat down and had a very frank discussion about what Santos needed, and he made it clear that in order for there ever to be a solution, FARC had to be gone after and weakened. You know, I said to my people afterwards, this is a good guy, give him everything he needs.
Santos' reorganization of Colombia's intelligence agencies paved the way for his first triumph over the FARC. In 2008, he implored those around him to come up with a plan to rescue 15 hostages being held by the FARC, including 3 Americans, 11 Colombian police and military, and former senator and presidential candidate Ingrid Betancourt, a French-Colombian woman whose kidnapping and 6+ years in the jungle had captured the world's attention.
I said, please think out of the box. If you have an idea, no matter how crazy it is, spill it out.
2 women in the military, who for years had been listening in on the FARC's radio transmissions from the jungle, suggested that government soldiers could pose as rebels and trick the guerrillas into handing over the hostages. While many in the military dismissed the idea as foolish, Santos didn't. He approved Operation Jacques.
So that's what that was. I saw that story. I saw that story on Locked Up Abroad. That was amazing. The risks of this case were huge due to the time they spent kidnapping. It had national and international repercussions, political repercussions.
I was risking everything because I knew that if that went wrong, I had to resign as Minister of Defense.
He said, I will assume the political responsibility. So this implies leadership at the highest level.
As the mission unfolded, Santos listened in.
Everything was calculated to the second. There was no doubt whatsoever that if they were discovered, they would have been executed right away.
When the first helicopter stayed on the ground, 10 minutes longer than expected, and the all-clear code never came, Santos feared the worst.
In those 10 minutes, between the moment that the code should have arrived, I thought about everything, about my life, about how I had to resign, about how I'm going to have to explain to the country why many soldiers had died.
The hostages had slowed down their own rescue by refusing to go with the Colombian soldiers who were posing as rebels. Once the helicopter lifted off, the soldiers told the hostages, "We are the National Army. You are free."
I called her mother.
What does an Artlist subscription cover? Well, everything.
Do you cover broadcast commercials?
We cover everything.
And I called her mother and I said, "Your daughter is free." And she said, I don't believe you, I don't believe you. And I said, well, I will bring her to you. We flew to Bogota and the mother was waiting. I delivered Ingrid to her mother. You rescued 15 persons from the middle of the jungle without one single drop of blood. We had to strike them at the very top, and this operation had a tremendous impact, demoralizing the heads of the FARC.
Con la gestión del ministro Santos y con todas las acciones
with the management of Minister Santos and with all the actions, structural actions,
acciones estructurales que
which allowed
permitieron
breaking the
romper el
myth
mito
that the
de que las
FARC
FARC
was
era
untouchable.
intocable.
Two years later, in 2010, Santos was elected president, largely based on the successful war he was waging against the FARC. He received 69% of the vote. It was the largest margin of victory in Colombia's history.
This photograph was taken the day of my inauguration. We went to where the Indian leaders, the indigenous governors, they're called, and I went there to ask for their permission to come to the Congress and be sworn in as president. They gave me their blessing. They told me to take care of Mother Nature. The indigenous communities have been attacked by FARC or recruited with force, their kids, and they gave me this stick, which is the signal of power.
He was able to see, had the imagination and the vision to see, that this was the moment when you could pivot to peace.
When Juan Manuel, as president-elect, started speaking of peace, starting a peace process with the guerrillas, and that immediately caught my attention. That, oh, speaking of this now, this is interesting.
Desde que conocí a Juan
From the
Manuel,
moment I met Juan Manuel, he always spoke to me about peace.
de la paz. Siempre estuvo pendiente
He was always looking how to build and achieve peace.
de cómo construir para llegar a un país en paz.
No solamente para
Not
mí,
only
sino
for
para
me, but for
muchos,
many.
no estaba dentro
The
de
transformation of the president was not something we expected.
el libreto político
Let's say it wasn't within the political script.
esa transformación del presidente.
President Santos has shown me and a lot of other Colombian leaders that you have to have strategic aims. Governing is not about pleasing.
Making peace after long and bloody conflict is not a work for the faint-hearted. And you can't expect to be appreciated in the short run. You should do it if you believe it's the best way to give your kids and grandkids a better future.
While the Colombian public was weary of war, there was also widespread resistance to negotiating with guerrilla leaders who had terrorized the country for decades.
Uribe, Pastrana, Samper, Gaviria.
Previous presidential attempts at brokering peace had failed miserably.
Betancourt.
What Santos did that his predecessors didn't
Turbay.
was look outside his borders for help.
Lopez. At the beginning of the process, I brought in some international advisors who had hands-on experience in negotiations in the Palestine-Israeli conflict, in Northern Ireland.
This was someone who was completely sincere in his genuine desire to change the life.
Some international advisors who had hands-on experience in negotiations in the Palestine-Israeli conflict, in Northern Ireland.
This was someone who was completely sincere in his genuine desire to change the lives of the people and to bring peace where before conflict had been the norm and thousands of people suffering as a result.
Santos is a student of history. He and his team studied 17 conflicts around the world to learn what strategies led to peace and those that didn't. His government began holding secret negotiations with the FARC.
They wanted a ceasefire since the beginning. I said no. I applied the rules of the game that I imposed in these negotiations, which was what I call the Rabin Doctrine. You fight terrorism, as if there is no peace process, and you negotiate the peace as if there is no terrorism.
He was never anyone who wanted to compromise with terrorism. He just thought if it was possible to create the circumstances in which terrorists would cease to be terrorists, and in particular the next generation would find a different and better and more fruitful existence, then they should be offered a way out.
I'm neither a hawk or a dove. It depends on the situation. Sometimes you have to be a hawk, and an effective hawk, to achieve peace.
On November 4th, 2011, just 15 months after taking office, the Colombian military came to President Santos and told him they knew where FARC leader Alfonso Cano was hiding. The Marxist commander had encouraged mass kidnappings of the country's political.
What's this? What the horseshoes?
You always want a deal,
Oh,
but sometimes you need it delivered.
Political and economic elite to President Santos and told him they knew where FARC leader Alfonso Cano was hiding. The Marxist commander had encouraged mass kidnappings of the country's political and economic elite in order to pressure the government to release high-ranking guerrillas.
The decision to authorize the operation by our special forces against Alfonso Cano was probably one of the most difficult decisions, because the negotiations, the secret negotiations, had already started, and we were exchanging messages.
When the Colombian military and national police got to Cano and killed the FARC #1, it really demonstrated to the FARC the capabilities of the military, how strong was President Santos' leadership, and how strong it was our persistence to get to targets.
It was a necessary condition to weaken the FARC, to hit them where it hurt the most, to hit them at the top. Otherwise, they would never sit down and negotiate in good faith.
Three months later, in February of 2012, the peace negotiations became public when the two sides began meeting in Havana, Cuba. But Santos' pursuit of peace was taking a toll on his popularity. As the 2014 presidential election approached, his popularity was at an all-time low.
When President Santos was running for re-election, I was the candidate for the principal left opposition party in the country. I didn't always agree with President Santos, and I must tell you that when I took the step to support him in his re-election, it was the right thing to do, because I had faith that he was going to go through with the peace process.
With unlikely allies like Senator Lopez, President Santos was re-elected by the slimmest of margins. A year later, when the FARC killed 11 Colombian soldiers in their sleep, many wanted Santos to end his pursuit of peace.
The whole country had turned against us. I would say 95% of the country was demanding my father to end the negotiations.
It actually went further within the family. I had a personal fight with my father. I told him, Dad, this is a moment where I think you should start listening to people. He sat me down, he grabbed my arm and he said, I'm gonna keep on going because this is exactly the things I don't want Colombians to experience again. I want to put an end to this conflict.
Deep inside, I knew that this is part of the war, and that I couldn't really break the negotiations because of this.
He's taught all of us a lesson about how
knowing about history is very important in that it teaches you how people in the past have handled important situations and learn about their mistakes or success.
Juan Manuel ha sido un hombre absolutamente.
Juan Manuel has been a very coherent man in terms of peace.
About their mistakes or success.
Juan Manuel ha sido un hombre absolutamente coherente en temas de paz. Siempre.
Always.
Todo lo que hizo en su
Everything
carrera
that he
pública
did in
lo
his
hizo
political career,
pensando
he always did it to arrive at his port of destiny.
en ese puerto de destino, la paz.
Peace.
On September 26, 2016, after 6 years of painstaking negotiations, Juan Manuel Santos finally arrived at his port of destiny. When he signed a peace accord with the FARC that formally ended over 50 years of civil war, during which 220,000 Colombians had been killed.
What we signed today is a declaration of the Colombian people in front of the world that we are tired of war, that we do not accept violence as a means to defend ideas, that we say loud and clear, no more war.
No más la guerra.
Six days later, Colombians were asked to approve or reject the peace accord in a nationwide vote.
We invited the negotiators, their families, the ministers, their families. We're going to have a huge party and celebrate how we were going to win.
I came that night from the Pacific region, and I immediately came to the palace to celebrate. I was sure that we're going to win.
When the results finally came in,
Ah, dang it. Don't you more?
That's why right now,
have
when
more
you activate
suspense,
your
why don't ya?
life-saving USCCA membership at the Platinum or Elite level, you'll...
Well, why this adds up? Okay.
I was sure that we're going to win.
when the results finally came in, we lost by a tiny margin, but we lost. And I quite frankly was not prepared for that.
President Santos and supporters of the peace accord had underestimated the painful imprint that decades of FARC terror had left on their country.
Yo creo que fue
I think it was a very difficult
un
moment
momento muy difícil, porque como
because as a
colombiana
Colombian
y como
and
esposa de
as
Juan
Juan
Manuel,
Manuel's wife,
pues no me imaginé
I
que
don't
el
imagine
país
that the country
fuera
was going
decirle
to say no to
no a la
peace.
paz.
The country let him down. But I saw that night a true leader who persisted and proved the country wrong.
My sons, my wife, the negotiators, my ministers, they were all devastated, very emotional. And when you're very emotional, you're not a good advisor. So I told them to leave me alone for a while.
When I saw my father there sitting in his study, just thinking. He wasn't sad, he wasn't angry, he was just thinking his next move. It showed how cool-minded he is, how he was going to turn this around.
I closed my eyes and I meditated for about 4 or 5 minutes to sort of clean my mind of emotions, and then I started thinking, well, how can I find a positive aspect of this disastrous result?
No me rendiré.
I will not give up. I will keep seeking peace until the very last minute of my term, because that is the path to leave a better country to our sons and daughters. Better country to our sons and daughters.
It was the worst week of our lives. Seeing my father's work for almost 25 years of his public life come to an end was devastating, was very sad.
I agree.
All of a sudden, we start hearing people screaming. We didn't know where it was coming from, and somebody from our security detail says there are around 200 students saying that my father should keep on going.
President Santos and supporters of the peace agreement had also underestimated the scale of the opposition led by his predecessor. Critics argued that the punishment for FARC guerrillas outlined in the peace agreement was too lenient. They also objected to a provision of the plan allowing former rebels to participate in politics, a fixture of peace processes around the world.
There is no way that an army of the size of the FARC is going to give in if the only route is jail and silence.
I cannot allow the peace that which we had already in our hands to simply disappear. How am I going to proceed? What is it that I can do? Invited the leaders of the no votes to sit down and renegotiate the agreement.
Despite the fact of the difficulties, many in the international community were watching and really appreciate that effort to consolidate the peace. That kind of spiritual courage is very rare.
4 days later, the winds changed when the phone rang at 4 o'clock in the morning.
I woke up, I answered the phone, and I heard a voice saying, "Congratulations. Congratulations for your father's achievement." This was Ingrid Betancourt, the former presidential candidate that was kidnapped by the FARC, calling me from Paris. I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
My son Martin called me.
He answers, of course he was sleeping, and I said, "Dad, you just won the Nobel Peace Prize."
I was so asleep and I said, "Oh, call me later," and I hang up. And he said, "This can't be so." So he called again and again and again, and finally I woke up and I realized that it was true. I never thought that I would win the Nobel Prize, especially after losing the referendum. This gave what I was trying to pursue, a new agreement, a tremendous push. The backing of the international community, that was how it was interpreted here. And I needed that encouragement and that backing in order to continue to reach my port of destiny.
Responding to the Nobel Committee's challenge to continue the peace process, Santos and the
When you download a song from Artlist, it's yours to use forever and ever and ever and ever. So head to our
negotiator Responding to the Nobel Committee's challenge to continue the peace process, Santos and the negotiators went back to work. His critics were angered when he took the revised peace accord directly to Congress, where it was overwhelmingly approved.
It's part of his character is to be tenacious, perseverant, and audacious. And those three elements were essential in bringing about the peace process and not giving up.
This agreement succeeded because President Santos did not allow the acts of violence and the very furious opposition to intervene with the end arrival point of bringing peace to a country and dedicate all of our efforts to social development and social change.
To have taken it this far is an extraordinary achievement. I used to always say to him that the real lessons of conflict resolution are that you need to get a framework that both sides perceive as fair. You need to be prepared to implement that over a long period, not a short period of time. The agreement for peace is the beginning, not the end. You need to understand there are going to be real and profound setbacks along the way, and you need finally never to give up.
Peace and harmony are part of these shared values. They are a common longing and a dream that we have sought to realize for years, decades, centuries.
Many consider me a traitor to my class. Many of them thought that I was elected because I was very successful making war and that I should have continued making war. And the fact that I sat down with my former enemies and negotiated peace, that was treason.
That a man is a man. That every life is sacred. That every war is a defeat. I think it is important to say that the president has been coherent in his search for peace, and that he has been very stubborn in achieving it. That's very important because sometimes things looked very different.
This was a really tough thing to do. This was frankly tougher than Northern Ireland. Tougher, I think, than any conflict I've been involved in. I would put the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in the same bracket.
Yeah, I agree too.
I think he wanted to give all those Colombians a different set of choices. And I think he was willing, in the end, to risk his standing in the short run to enhance Colombia's standing and quality of life over the long term.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Nobel Peace Prize for 2016 to Colombia's President, Juan Manuel Santos, for his resolute and courageous effort to end the country's more than 50 years long civil war.
I thank you, members of the Norwegian Nobel Committee, because on this occasion you have not only awarded a prize to peace, you helped make it possible. The sun of peace finally shines in the heavens of Colombia. May it
Muchas gracias. Y que su luz, el sol
de la paz brilla por fin en el cielo de Colombia y que su luz
May its light shine upon the whole world.
al mundo entero. Muchas gracias.
This is an award I received in the name of all Colombians, and especially the victims. I carry the victims in my heart, and I will carry them until I die.
I would like to meet this guy.
I spoke to many victims because it became an exercise for me, an intellectual exercise, speaking to the victims, to get refueled in order to continue. And I talked to them. Tell me about what happened to you. And they started describing the most terrible dramas. For example, his father and 3 brothers were murdered in that farm, the same farm. He was displaced next day.
Hey phone, connect to Wi-Fi.
Dang it.
Connecting to cyber criminals. You're not listening. I am listening, and I might not be.
He was displaced next day. Almost 19 years, then he went back. And to see him today, showing me with pride, I have 100 hens, he said. And then he showed me his 15 cows. And then he showed me the coffee. And he said, I'm an entrepreneur now because the peace and the programs that the government is putting in place has allowed me to recover my dignity. I will never cease to be a victim, but now I can smile and I can see the future with hope. Modesta Rivas was one of millions of victims. And what we decided at the beginning is to put the victims, their reparations, at the center of the solution of this war. Policy I put in place at the beginning of my second term, give free housing to the most vulnerable people, which are the victims, displaced, and in this case, a woman.
En octubre del 2014 me llaman y me dicen, señora Modesta, ya tiene la casa. Me llaman y me dicen,
displaced, and in this case, a woman.
En octubre del 2014 me llaman y me dicen, señora Modesta, ya tiene la casa.
Modita, you have a house.
The
joy for me and my family was something spectacular.
Espectacular, Dios mío, por fin, gracias,
my God,
mi sueño.
At last, thank you, my dream.
A house for any family, especially somebody who never had any idea or not even the wish of having their own house. To give them a house, change their lives.
El presidente Santos, pues, con su gobierno, yo le doy gracias porque el presidente Santos,
President
pues,
Santos
con
and his
su
government,
gobierno,
I say
yo
thank
le doy
you.
gracias porque
Because to be
estar
in
en esta
this
casa
house is
es
peace.
paz.
His life has served someone else other than himself. There was a phrase in one of his speeches, live your life in a way that you made someone else's life a little bit better.
When President Santos left office in 2018, 7 million victims of the Civil War had already received government assistance. Businesses around the country were thriving. Foreign investment was on the rise. And the New York Times ranked Colombia as the #2 tourist destination in the world.
Slowly but surely, a more peaceful, more normal life has returned, making it possible for people to develop the innate resources of the country.
There was a time when Colombia and Bogota and all these parts of Colombia were known for violence. Even today, that's not the case.
As a result of the peace process, the murder rate in Colombia is the lowest it has been in 50 years. And the 9,000 weapons the FARC turned over were destroyed by the United Nations and will never again be used to kill.
I thought they were used to be recycled.
Miles de armas se han entregado a
Thousands of
buena
weapons have
custodia.
been delivered to good custody
No serán
and will
jamás
never be threatened
de hoy
for
en
any
adelante
citizen
una amenaza
of our
para
country
cualquier
or the
ciudadano
world.
de nuestro país o del mundo. Es un día muy
Today it
especial.
is a very special day, a day that we will never forget.
Olvidaremos. El día
The day in which the
en que
weapons
las
were
armas
changed
se
by
cambiaron
words.
por las palabras. Y puedo decir
And I can say from the bottom of my heart
mi corazón que por llegar
that
a este
to
día,
get to this day, to live this day, to
vivir este día,
achieve this day,
por lograr este día, ha valido
has
la
been
pena
worth having been
ser
president of
presidente
Colombia.
de Colombia.
Bueno, yo debo decir que como
I must
viejo
say
oficial
that
de la
as a
policía
police
que
officer
fui
for more
por más
than
de
38
38
years, as
años,
a
director de la
police
policía,
director,
nunca imaginé
I never imagined the day
el día
when
en
the
que las
FARC
FARC
would
harían
surrender the
desarmarizadas.
weapons.
Realmente lo que hubieran producido
Those
serían
weapons
muchos
would have
muertos,
caused a lot of
policías y
deaths.
soldados
Policemen
y
and
miembros de
soldiers
las
could have
comunidades.
died.
Con ese parque de
They could
armamento
have sustained
hubieran
that
podido
war for at
sostener
least
esa
8
guerra
or 10
por
more years.
mínimo 8 o 10 años más.
Well, what I've been able to learn is that there is no conflict that cannot be solved. Nobody thought that peace with the FARC could be.
Hey, look, sorry, I know you were just about to watch another YouTube video, but before you go, I've got a quick, important message for you. I know.
Yeah.
Possible. Well, what I've been able to learn is that there is no conflict that cannot be solved. Nobody thought that peace with the FARC could be possible. No society can live forever at war. This is something that goes against human nature.
I believe that President Santos' legacy, not only in Colombia, but internationally, is a demonstration that dialogue can work. That dialogue is the way to cross the profound differences that separate people and the great conflicts that separation produces, including war.
You should never minimize stopping bad things from happening. But whether good things happen depend upon often what people do and the decisions they make after the peace is made, and how much people can let go of the past and build on the future. And those are things that the Colombians are going to have to work out. How it all plays out will depend upon what happens next.
I'd say to the people of Colombia, just remember the darkest days of this conflict and what it was like. Debate by all means the right way to go forward, but don't let it slip backward. That would be a big mistake.
History will recognize this incredible effort. President Santos in the future is going to be recognized by new generations of Colombians from taking our country from war to peace.
But peace came at a steep political price for Juan Manuel Santos. His opponents accused him of going easy on the FARC terrorists. His popularity plummeted, and in 2018, he would be succeeded by a president who opposed the accord.
When I look back on my presidency, on the peace process, on my life, what I would like somebody to say, there was a president in Colombia who brought peace to his country, and I say to myself, what a cost in terms of my family, my popularity, my political capital. Then I think about how many lives we have saved. I say to myself, it was worthwhile.
You will die.
Was that good? Tell me in the comment section below or in the live chat box on the right. But now that we did that, but now we're gonna take another short break. So BRB. Hello, boys. I'm back. Do you recognize that quote? If you do, tell me in either the comment section down below or in the live chat box. Then anyway, let's get started with the next video. World peace is possible, and here's how, as explained by YouTuber Hello Germany.
You will die. Peace. Hello. People from Earth, today is World Peace Day, and congratulations, everywhere it's peaceful. Well, no, it isn't. Everywhere there's a crisis and wars. So World Peace Day sounds a bit cynical, but don't give up hope. I'm here to tell you that world peace will be reached. Yay! Now, just to clear up, in Germany, September 1st is Weltfriedenstag, World Peace Day. The International Day of Peace is September 21st. Makes sense. No, it doesn't. Well, oh well, doesn't matter. Every day is World Peace Day. Now, I sound like a nutter, but I'm not. Well, I might be. But there's a slight chance that I might not be talking complete bullshit, so you might as well believe me, because, well, world peace! It's actually quite easy. It's actually quite easy to get frustrated when you look at the situation the world is in, but there's something you can do and have to do. Step 1, and this will hopefully calm you, is the realization that you yourself alone probably won't be able to bring peace to the planet. But that's good, because it takes a lot of pressure from your shoulders. You yourself will definitely not change much, so it's totally okay to at least try a little bit. It won't hurt. And it won't hurt if you don't succeed. Hear me out. Step 2 is that you have to realize that world peace sounds like an utopia, that it will never happen, but that's not true. World peace is possible and it will happen. Yes, it's unavoidable. Now, the sad thing is, it won't happen in your lifetime. It will take thousands of years, possibly even a million. There's tons of tiny steps necessary. Millions of steps necessary until we are a society without wars. But the good thing is, there are 8 billion people on this earth, so if at least some try to work towards world peace, it will happen eventually. Now, you might think, what's in it for you if you won't ever see it happen? Well, you did something good for future generations. And apart from that, you'll just feel better. Here's what you do, and trust me, this works. Start with yourself. When you walk around the street and you see someone passing by, smile at him. We rarely do, but just try it. You know what will happen? The person you're smiling at will probably smile back most of the time. And he will feel better and you will feel better. And together you did a tiny little step towards worldwide peace. Yes, it sounds crazy because there are 1,000,000,000 times a million more steps needed, but you did something and you made your own life and that of another person better, and you should feel great. Of course, there also might be the occasional grumpy bugger that doesn't smile back, but don't worry, he will die someday. So that's okay. Or he just had a bad day, but at least you smiled. And you know what? Even if nobody smiles at you, you will still feel better. Try it. Go to a mirror and look at yourself and smile. There's nothing that can stop you from feeling better if you smile, because that's what smiling is. Now, if you want to take it a step further, simply do some nice things. Say thank you and please, hold open a door, leave a nice comment on YouTube. Anything may it be as small and worthless as you can imagine. If you do something good, no matter if the person deserves it or not, or doesn't even take notice, it will make the world just a tiny little bit better. And if it doesn't, at least it won't make it worse. So it's worth a try. Except if you're a lazy, grumpy bugger. But then I have news for you. You will die. Peace. That's it. Manual off. It will take thousands of years. Tiny steps necessarily. Tiny steps necessary. Necessary. Tiny steps necessarily. Necessary. Now the sad thing is, there's tons of tiny steps necessary. Why? Tiny steps necessary. Millions steps necessary. Until scheißen fucken die Dreck. Millions steps necessary until we are
The German word for the day is Frieden, which of course means peace, like in the German song which won the Eurovision Song Contest in 1982, Ein bisschen Frieden, which means a little bit of peace, which doesn't make any sense at all. There's either peace or there isn't. There can't be a little bit of peace. It's like being a bit pregnant. Here we go. Ein bisschen Frieden, ein bisschen...
Alright, here's more peace quotes in celebration of the International Day of Peace. Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. Buddha. Peace begins with a smile. Mother Teresa. If we are to create peace in our world, we must begin with our children. Mahatma Gandhi. There is no path to peace. Peace is the path. Mahatma Gandhi. When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. Jimi Hendrix. Peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding. Albert Einstein. It's not the world that needs peace, it is people. When people are at peace, the world will be at peace. Prem Rawata. If I pronounced that right. There was never a good war or a bad peace. Benjamin Franklin. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. Martin Luther King, Jr. You find peace not by rearranging the circumstances of your life, but by realizing who you are at the deepest level. Eckhart Tolle. We must restore hope to the young people, help the old, be open to the future, and spread love. We need to include the excluded and preach peace. Pope Francis. If you cannot find peace within yourself, you will never find it anywhere else. Marvin Gaye. gay. There can never be peace between nations until there is first known that peace which is within the souls of men. Black Elk. Mankind must remember that peace is not a gift. Let me try that again. Mankind must remember that peace is not God's gift to his creatures. Peace is our gift to each other. Eli Weasley. Wesley. I don't know. I do not want the peace that passeth understanding. I want the understanding that bringeth peace. Helen Keller. The most valuable possession you can own is an open heart. The most powerful weapon you can be is an instrument of peace. Carlos Santana. The real and lasting victories are those of peace, not war. Ralph Waldo Emerson. It isn't enough to talk about peace. One must believe in it, and it isn't enough to believe in. And it isn't enough to believe in it. One must work at it. Eleanor Roosevelt. Peace is joy at rest, and joy is peace on its feet. Annie Lamott. You can bomb the world to pieces, but you can't bomb it into peace. Wait, let me see. Let me rephrase. You can bomb the world to pieces, but you can't bomb it into peace. Power to the peaceful. Michael Franti. Peace and friendship with all mankind is our wisest policy. Thomas Jefferson. If you want peace, you don't talk to your friends, you talk to your enemies. Desmond Tutu. Just like what Trump's doing, but... but he's not talking about the peace part! I don't think, anyway. Every breath we take, every step we make, can be filled with peace, joy, and serenity. Thich Nhat Hanh. If someone thinks that love and peace is a cliche that must have been left behind in the 60s, that's his problem. Love and peace are eternal. John Lennon. And if you remember, I did the song. If you remember in the opening, I did the song. That song was from John Lennon. Him. I think he'd be around 80 years old today if he wasn't assassinated. I think I could be wrong. While you are proclaiming peace with your lips, be careful to have it more fully in your heart. St. Francis of Assisi. Remember your humanity and forget the rest. Bertrand Russell. You can never obtain peace in the outer world until you make peace with ourselves. Dalai Lama. What does peace mean to you? Tell me in the comments section or the live chat. This show has been produced to help promote the cause of peace on Earth. All participants in this project are volunteers. There is no commercial commercial component to this project whatsoever. Love and well-being, that's what it's all about. Slide design, Mitch Dickoff, songwriter Lynn Domenico, arrangement Stuart Hoffman. Now this video is how to create world peace. So if you're interested in wanting to create world peace, watch this video.
World peace. What a noble aspiration. Having things in the world, everywhere in the world, be in harmony, be in flow, be right. Then what a worthy aspiration, right? But how difficult does it feel when we're bombarded every day by images and scenes of chaos? No matter where we look, it seems that things are getting worse, or at least there's evidence of that. Things are becoming more uncertain. And so this whole concept of world peace starts to seem like an impossible dream when every day our senses are assaulted with images of destruction. And it's easy, in the middle of this storm of chaos, it's easy to start to feel that maybe there's nothing that we can do. But that doesn't stop us from striving. That doesn't stop us from wanting things to be better. And maybe you're one of those people. Maybe you are one of those people who is so angered and is so infuriated and is so upset because of all the things that are happening out in the world that maybe you're one of those people who's out there doing something about it. And maybe you're doing that in your own unique way, with the goal of world peace. But what if this whole notion of world peace, this whole idea of making the outside world better, what if there's a way to actually do it? What if there's a way to get it out of the idea of just being a dream and actually bring it into your reality? Actually bring this dream to life. What if there's a way to do that? Well, think about this. World peace. Isn't that just another way of saying that everybody in the world is feeling peaceful? That everybody in the world is feeling more calm, more centered, happier, more creative, more productive, more loving? So this chasing of world peace, what if that's just another way of saying that I want everybody else to feel better so that I can feel better? And what if all of those other people are waiting on you? What if all those other people actually just need to see someone who's living their own life, who's happy with who they are, who's happy where they are? Because from that place of feeling more confident, feeling more calm, from that place of having a life that is steadily improving, you have so much influence and so much ability to affect real change because you're leading by example. And from that place of peaceful power, you can still go out and do the things that it takes to make the world a better place. But why settle for taking those actions from a place of fear or a place of need or a place of overwhelm? Why not take those actions from a place of self-authorization? Why not take those actions from a place of peaceful power? And then watch as the interactions that you have with other people, watch as the way that you begin to see the world starts to become a reflection of the world inside of you. World peace comes from inner peace, and that is within your power.
Thank you. And which obviously Trump doesn't have. Oops. What did I do?
World peace.
Sorry, I just want to... You've earned it. You earned my subscription, Power Life. Nah. And if you like this channel, you can subscribe too. Now, but then... Okay, now in this video...
Join me in this masterclass. In 1 hour, I believe you will learn one of the most powerful, transformative ideas that you've ever been exposed to. Because I'm going to digest and put together the greatest insights and ideas that I've gone through in the last 2 years, from ups and downs, from traveling across the world, from talking to some of the most insightful masters I've ever encountered. I'll see you there.
Hi friends, welcome.
Okay, now this video is by Generation Tech, and he's going to explain how to achieve world peace according to Hollywood. So let's get started.
Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. So we're going to take a step away from Star Wars just for one series. You know, the whole Separatist versus Earth thing was kind of tough. I just need to recharge a little bit. But doing that series kind of got me thinking about humanity as a whole.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Generation Tech does Star Wars videos. So if you like Star Wars, then subscribe to his channel. That's Generation Tech. All right, let's continue.
When Alan Shepard, commander of the Apollo 14 mission, and also my character in Mass Effect, first saw the Earth from the moon, he recalled crying. It was a powerful moment to see our planet so small and far in the distance, hanging there in the void as a fragile little blue pearl contained within a thin protective layer of atmosphere. Now the 500 plus humans who have traveled into space on their own will, abductions, Iron Man, and telephone booths don't count, all have felt a similar phenomenon, which is known as the overview effect. These people usually develop a wider appreciation for our planet, along with viewing conflicts on our Earth as less important and almost petty. In my pursuit for world peace as a beauty pageant contestant, I've noticed that the world is in a cyclical cycle of violence. It's almost never ending. World War I sets the roots for World War II, which leads to the Cold War, and most of the conflicts we see today are all unresolved issues with roots that can be traced like a genetic imprint to prior conflicts in our history.
Which is why sometimes I wonder what would happen if World War I never happened. Also, he's kind of right about something. He's kind of right about the fact about one thing led to another. Because World War I led to World War II, and then World War II led to the Cold War, and the Cold War led to the war on drugs and the war on terror. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay. But I hope you did hear me about that. He was right, because he's right.
So besides sending all of humanity into space to space out, how can we stop ourselves from constantly fighting each other? Well, I've always said that fiction mimics reality, so why don't we just look at a bunch of Hollywood movies where humanity does come together to achieve a common goal, and who knows, maybe we can learn something from it. The first type of story is what I call the Independence Day scenario. Growing up, this was one of my favorite movies.
I had a feeling he was gonna say that. I had a feeling he was gonna bring that movie up. Call it a hunch.
It showed the world that, like Mentos and Coca-Cola, if you add Jeff Goldblum to Coca-Cola, you can create a very powerful force. But more importantly, it showed humanity coming together in its darkest moments to celebrate Independence Day. And not just any Independence Day, American Independence Day. Now, obviously, this is an American movie made for an American audience, and the message is quite simple, but nonetheless still important. In the event of an alien invasion, the world just needs more American-style optimism. Sure, the aliens are completely outgunning us, but if we don't try something, we might as well curl up into a small ball and die. I remember getting teary-eyed after seeing fighter pilots from all around the world receive the message to attack through Morse code. There was the Russians listening to post-Soviet era Soviet propaganda music, the Japanese in their Godzilla-proof bunkers, and then a very special scene which showed Iraqi and Israeli pilots gathering together in the desert.
That's a dream of mine too. Arabs and Muslims and Jews working together. Or Arabs and Israelis working together. You get the idea.
Which was really heartwarming to see. Only 5 years before Saddam Hussein was randomly launching rockets into Israeli cities. As a matter of fact, I think the only people who didn't enjoy this scene were the alien scumbags and Hezbollah. But that was in real life. They boycotted the film, claiming it was propaganda for the so-called genius of Jews and their concern for humanity. Obviously, they didn't read the novelization of the book, in which this combined force of Muslims, Jews, and Christian pilots are actually all on their way to defend the holy city of Mecca from an alien city destroyer. And that, Hezbollah, is what happens when you don't do your research. You look like a douchebag. Trust
Agreed.
me, I know. In the end, I think Independence Day's assessment of how Earth would band together if In the end, is what happens book from an alien city destroyer. And that, Hezbollah, is what happens when you don't do your research. You look like a douchebag. Trust me, I know. In the end, I think Independence Day's assessment of how Earth would band together if aliens like the ones portrayed in the movie came is spot on. Faced with our imminent destruction at the hands of a technological superior species that refuses to negotiate with us and uses data as a sock puppet, it kind of makes sense that our own beefs and rivalries will be quickly forgotten. Next is the Armageddon method. Whether it's an asteroid heading towards us, the sun is dying, or the core of the Earth has just stopped spinning, humanity must put its scientific minds together and figure out a way to defeat this existential threat. And naturally, the only solution our scientists can make for these three extremely different situations is to use a nuke and explode our way to victory. How very Kim Jong-un of us. What's interesting is in most of these movies, the eventual destination of these nukes are in an extremely hard to reach place. But this absurdly difficult challenge is also what pushes our scientists to create new machines and technologies that we would have never designed otherwise. I'd like to think that this sentiment is true. I mean, if we look at our own history, due to the Cold War, just half a century after we invented machines that could fly, we had a man on the moon. You could say whatever you want about humanity, but you can't deny that we have a lot of ambition.
For the first time in the history of the planet, a species has the technology to prevent its own extinction.
Next up is what I like to call the Matt Damon dilemma, which asks the age-old question, how much is the world willing to sacrifice to save Matt Damon? It all starts during the movie Interstellar, where Matt Damon is cast as a villain playing opposite of the much more likable Matthew McConaughey. Bitter over not being able to be the good guy in his own space movie, Matt Damon signed on for Interstellar 2, or as some call it, The Martian. In Interstellar 2, Matt Damon is once again left alone on a barren planet. But this time, surprise, he's likable and totally not trying to kill everyone. Instead of blowing up his fellow astronauts, he even blows himself up, which is wicked cool. And better yet, the world also thinks that he's wicked cool and should be saved. And he even gets Murph to come along and save him. When the United States supply mission fails, suddenly the Chinese government comes to their aid. Apparently, they have a secret rocket that's even better. The point is, despite all the military and industrial espionage, human rights abuses, currency manipulation, IP theft, and hacking attacks, China and the United States can get along, if that means saving Matt Damon's life. Now, logically speaking, I wonder how many millions of dollars were used to save Matt Damon's life. And with that money, how many thousands of starving children could be fed, how many life-saving operations could be performed. But because Matt Damon's struggle became a very public ordeal early on, the world fell in love with him. And this was no longer a decision based on rationale, but an ideologically driven one. The idea of his story becoming a worldwide sensation is believable. In its most basic form, Matt Damon's struggles on Mars are extremely relatable. In one way or another, we're all just trying to survive. And despite my unnecessarily over-the-top bias against Matt Damon, I think he represents the everyman very well. And despite getting hacked by Chinese government interests, this movie is still quintessentially very American at its core. The movie is about never giving up and the importance of an individual. The message NASA and the United States wants to send to the world is that it's always going to be willing to try to save everyone because all life is precious. A naive yet beautiful concept worth applauding, especially if he had the resources to back it up. As Tom Hanks once said to Matt Damon in a small village in Normandy after sacrificing his entire platoon to save him,
"Earn this."
When it comes to video calls, the biggest problem I always have is finding good lighting. I pride myself on looking good and being presented.
him in a small village in Normandy after sacrificing his entire platoon to save him.
Earn this.
So in the end, what do all of these Hollywood movies have in common? Well, for one, the United States is usually portrayed as the most kick-ass country in the world, obviously. And then there's always that moving montage of the world watching climactic events unfold with a powerful speech to go along with it. And then there's usually a good chance that nukes will be used to defeat our problems. And then at that point we all realize how lazy Hollywood writing has become. But most importantly, Hollywood reminds us that if one day somehow an asteroid is on its way to Earth, or aliens invade, or Matt Damon's crew members leave him on Mars to die because he's so freaking annoying, humanity has the ability to rise up and face any challenge. It's Hollywood's most valuable gift to a troubled world: American optimism. I know a lot of these scenarios are completely unrealistic, but what if the world was at peace? What if all of our resources were combined together in a unified effort? The entire world spends $1.7 trillion a year on military expenses. That's enough money to buy every person on this planet a 2-day pass to Disneyland with magical morning early access. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah.
Wait, without a military, how would we fight off the aliens when they come?
Matt Damon.
Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. We will be getting back to Star Wars next episode, so don't worry. Like the well-rounded adults me and Ben try to pretend we are, our channel occasionally dabbles into other sorts of things. And guys, don't forget to hit that subscribe and notification button so you don't miss out on all the new content. And a special thanks to all of you Patreon supporters out there. You guys are awesome. If you were stuck on Mars, me and Ben would personally come to rescue you. As usual guys, thanks for joining us. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.
Hey, look, sorry, I know you were just about to watch another YouTube video, but before you go, I've got a quick, important message for you. I know.
Okay, now here's a video of how to make world. Okay, here's a video on how to make world peace by Troy Davis at TEDx Strasbourg University. Then after that, the next video, and then we'll take a short break. Artich. it's English. Troy Davis.
Merci, je m'appelle Troy Davis. Je suis, malgré mon nom anglais, anglophone, je suis strasbourgeois, pur port, né ici. Mais je vais parler en anglais, voilà, puisqu'on m'a demandé qu'il y ait au moins une intervention en anglais. Alors, je ne vais pas vous parler d'énergie démocratique, je vais vous parler d'autre chose, de comment faire la paix mondiale. Voilà, alors, how to create world peace in our times. This is a very big topic, very ambitious topic, and one of the reasons is that when people think of world peace, they think of nearly religious images. They think of an ideal world, they think everybody loves each other, and where you have social progress, environmental progress today, and it sounds so difficult that world peace is not taken as something practical. In fact, world peace is an age-old dream. People think about world peace all the time, but it's also the butt of jokes. You know, when you have Miss World and Miss Universe on stage, and the organizers ask, so what is your biggest dream? World peace. You know, it's kind of a joke. But unfortunately, it's too bad that it's a joke, because I say that we should redefine expectations, we should lower the expectations, and we should really think about how to do world peace, but not in the way, in this idealistic fantasy world of world peace. So, how do we do this? Well, another thing about world peace is that, ironically, it has been the goal of nearly all conquerors and of all empires, from the Egyptians and the Syrians to Charlemagne to the Romans. Nobody ever said, well, we're going to conquer people to go to war. They'll say, we'll conquer people and the world to have peace. Of course, it will be peace under my rule. I will be the king, and I will rule, and there will be peace. Even Hitler said the Third Reich, the goal was to create world peace. Not at all war. War was just a little detail on the way. And that's the problem, that you use the most idealistic notion, the most wonderful notion, but to do the most horrible things. So we really have a problem here. Now, let's redefine world peace in a more modest way. As I said before, we have this very harmful notion of world peace as, in a sense, paradise on earth. Well, as a political scientist and as a physicist, I do not believe in idealism. Idealism in politics doesn't exist. Idealism, in fact, kills people in politics. So let's redefine it. And of course, I know that you need to have social progress, amount of progress, but I say that peace in a very defined, modest way is the first necessary step. And how do I define it? Simply as the absence of war, in a sense, military war. Now, you might say this is not enough. I know it's not enough, but this would be already a huge and worthy goal. Think of what's happening in Syria today. People might say, oh, we have economic war between China and Europe and the US. I'm sure that the Syrians will be ecstatic to have economic war with their neighbor and not real military war. So when people answer you, oh, but there is more than just military war, then say, well, okay, let's get rid of the military war first, and then we can talk about the other goals. Because, to recap, other human progress depends on the absence of war. We've seen this in the prosperity. Europe is the most socially progressive continent or area in the world and in history. Why? Because we got rid of war, inside the European Union at least. So how do we make peace traditionally? There are two main paradigms, two main ways to make peace. One is civis pacem para bellum. Publius Flavius, 4th century Roman adage, peace through strength. If you want peace, prepare for war. That is the most traditional. It sounds paradoxical. You can give good arguments for it. But this is the most traditional way, which is still used today, by the way. This is not things which is, just antiquity. It's still used today. The second one is love your neighbor. Most religions, love your neighbor, love. Individual morality. Peace will happen through love. Well, I can give you many theoretical reasons why this doesn't work. But you just have to look at history for pragmatic reasons. For instance, we did create peace in Europe after 1945. In fact, the first step was reconciliation between France and Germany. Now, you can imagine that there was no love between French and Germans in 1945. In spite of that, we created peace. So anybody who tells you, to have peace, we need love. Gave them that counterexample. So neither work well, but there is one way that works. I will not give the theoretical justification, but just pragmatically, we know. It's political engineering, what I call political engineering. People might call it something else, but I call it engineering. In other words, before, remember, you had in the love paradigm, you were trying to put individual morality in the center. But this is very dangerous. If you put individual morality in the center of politics, this is very dangerous. That means the state cares about your individual morality. That means you don't have freedom anymore. What we should do is not have individual morality in the politics, but political morality. When I say morality, I don't mean that a politician is not supposed to cheat or be corrupt. Of course, well, not to be corrupt at least, but it's not his personal morality of the politician. I'm talking about the infrastructure of politics itself should be based on ethical principles. And we will see two of those principles later. I'll give you two historical examples of this political engineering. In fact, maybe those are the only two examples that we really know in the world that have been very successful. People are not used to thinking of them as examples, but that's what they are. They're examples of political engineering. The United States of America, which was, by the way, created in 1789. Nearly nobody knows that fact. Everybody thinks it's 1776. Even Americans think that. It's 1789. And Europe. Now, notice I don't say the European Union, because Europe is not a country. So I mean, in general, the process of European construction, including European Union and Council of Europe. Most people forget the Council of Europe, but this is very important. One very important thing is that people have forgotten the goal of European construction. I claim the goal is world peace. How can I make that claim? Well, in fact, it's very simple. Robert Schuman tells us this. In his own speech of May 9th, 1950, he tells us that the goal of European construction is world peace. Most people forget also that the founding fathers of Europe had not just gone out of one war. They had experienced the First World War as teenagers. So they had experienced 2 world wars in their lifetime. This is very important to understand the psychology and the motivation, the psychological motivation for those people to create peace, in spite of the fact that there was still so much hatred, in spite of that fact. And the proof is here, a facsimile of the Schuman Plan. The first words of the talk by Schuman is La paix mondiale, world peace. Because they knew very well that if Europe is part of the entire world, which we seem to have forgotten today. Today is as if we're just looking at our navel and trying to build our little Europe. Okay, slowly expanding, okay, fine. But we forget that the ultimate goal was world peace, and it was to be a 3-step process. First, peace between France and Germany. Then you expand it slowly to include all Europe. And then, they didn't know how, but somehow, ultimately, the real goal is world peace. They didn't have a specific plan or method, at least for world peace. But at least this gave a plan for European peace. But notice, it's not written European peace, it's world peace. So the founders of both political entities, the United States of America and Europe as a generic concept, were the first true, what I call political engineers. They set out to consciously build political structures, not by chance, not haphazardly. They set out to think. In fact, if you read the Federalist Papers, this is a wonderful, it's like an instruction manual of, it's like a bunch of engineers coming together and say, okay, how are we going to build this building? And they argue about this and that, but if you build it this way, this is going to happen, and so forth. It's wonderful. Most people, even in the US, do not see and read it, and it's not taught like that, but this is what it is. And they use many terms that have this idea of building and of constructing and so forth. But they were political geniuses, but there's a problem. In fact, they're amateurs, because there was no theory of political engineering. So they operated by the seat of their pants. I interviewed once Georges Bertoin, who was the former chief of staff of Jean Monnet, And they were, I mean, people think now it was European, the European construction was very, series of linear events and everything very logical. But no, there were crises all the time. They were trying to cope with crisis all the time. And there was not a sort of big master plan like an architect would have to build a building. There wasn't. There were general ideas and general thoughts how to do them, but there wasn't. So there are two weaknesses. Weaknesses in both cases were the same. It's very interesting. 200 years apart, 150 years apart, both the same weaknesses. There was not enough application of the democratic principle. Very important. I think you can see that. And secondly, there was no shared identity, no shared narrative in both cases. What was the consequence? The consequence is that after 70 years after the US was created, you had a civil war, the most destructive, the most deadly war in the history of the United States, tearing the United States apart. And about 60 years after that famous speech by Schuman, you have the Euro crisis. Very interesting to see about the same time frame, even though there's such a big difference in over 100 years in difference. So what we need is not just a theory of political engineering, but of democracy engineering, so that we do things in a democratic way. And also, we need a shared story. We need an identity. And how do we do this? Well, the way it's been done throughout the ages, in always the same way, through a shared identity myth or creation myth. If you study the origin of politics, every human group has always created their identity through some kind of democracy engineering, so that we do things in a democratic way. And also, we need a shared story. We need an identity. And how do we do this? Well, the way it's been done throughout the ages, in always the same way, through a shared identity myth or creation myth. If you study the origin of politics, every human group has always created their identity through some kind of creation myth. It's always like that. So what are the lessons for the world at large of those two historical examples? Well, first of all, the global political architecture must be re-engineered or re-architected. But it must be done in a more democratic way than we engineered or architected the US and Europe. Otherwise, we'll have the same problem, we will repeat the same problems. And secondly, we need to create together a global creation myth so that we are identified as human beings, not as members of a particular tribe, a sub-tribe of the human species. And so that we see ourselves as citizens of the world, not just of one little subunit. Now, what are the dangers? By definition, the global political architecture will be supranational. Okay, this is quite obvious. But it could be democratic or autocratic. Democracy is very, very hard work. You have to fight for it all the time. If you don't, it's like in the Alice in Wonderland, the Red Queen, who keeps on running all the time. And Alice said, well, why are you running? Well, because if we don't run, you'll never keep in place. You have to keep in place, you have to keep on running. Democracy is the same way. You can never stop. And if you stop, you will slip into autocracy. So the most likely outcome today, because we're not building consciously a global democracy,